the first good Polish joke since the coup in December. General Jaruzelski visits Moscow to get the Russians' blessing for his dictatorship and beg their help in overcoming the opposition of his people. In conclusion, they jointly declare that the West's failure to keep supporting bankrupt Poland would be rank interference in its internal affairs. A sick joke, to be sure, and imitative of President Reagan's light comments on the subject. When pressed to explain why he is paying off some of Poland's debts and doing headstands to avoid declaring it in default, he says he does not want to make Poland more dependent on the Soviet Union. The available East-West financial choices, however, are deadly serious. Poland's bankruptcy is a fact, disguised only by accounting tricks at Western banks. Romania is not far behind, and the Soviet Union itself is having cash flow troubles. The peril is finally dawning on Western investors in Eastern Europe. They must either keep up pretenses and keep lending the Soviet bloc a great deal more at the eventual expenses of Western taxpayers, or they must call a halt, hurting Western commerce but severely damaging the East. The only obvious conclusion to be drawn is that such economic war is too important to be left to bankers. The West's abnormally large yet routinely commercial investments to the East have been indeed interfering in the Soviet bloc, but in helpful ways that the Kremlin desperately wants continued. And Poland's bankruptcy will indeed make it even more dependent on Soviet help, but in ways that the Kremlin anxiously wants to avoid. So the issue is not whether the West can hope to collect $27 billion from the Poles and even more down from their allies they cannot pay. The question rather is whether to lend them billions more and on what terms. President Reagan comes to the question in odd circumstances. He is demanding a military buildup, but he can ill afford for the express purpose of driving the Russians toward an economic crisis that they already confront. In diplomatic weight, the terms of credit that he could establish tomorrow are far more potent than the missiles he aims to deploy. A crack of his window of vulnerability will be slight, and the Soviets' window has just blown wide open. If the president keeps listening to Western bankers and exporters, he will go right on pretending that the East's debt is collectible. He will let them roll it out over and tolerate its expansion to finance the sale of Western pride and goods and grain. That basically means taxing the democracies to permit the communist actions and nations to relieve their economic distress without seriously disturbing their military efforts.